The Middle East is one of the world's most volatile regions. Much of it is composed of Arab states ruled by dictators or monarchs. Most of these states are low on human development and freedom indicators, while some are racked by devastating civil wars. But a stark anomaly stands out in the Middle East in the form of a democratic, prosperous, and powerful state of Israel. A Jewish island in the middle of an Arab sea, Israel was envisioned as a wall of defense for Europe in Asia by the man who is widely credited as one of the founders of Israel and political Zionism, Theodore Herzl. Celebrated by some as the only democracy in the Middle East and reviled by some as a settler-colonial state that illegally occupied Palestine, the history of Israel and Palestine is a tragic and fascinating story. I am Dr. Hassan Bukhari, and this is the first episode of our series Palestine versus Israel. In this episode, we will discuss the Zionist ideology that gave birth to the State of Israel. The word Zionism comes from Zion, which is a synonym for Jerusalem. The goal of Zionism was the creation of a modern nation state for the Jewish people in Palestine. The Jewish people's history is inextricably linked to the Middle Eastern region of Palestine. They experienced most of their greatest tragedies and triumphs here. About 3,000 years ago, the Jews reached the apex of their power with the kingdom of David and Solomon, known as Dawood and Suleiman among the Arabs. The Jewish first temple was also built then. After Solomon, the kingdom was divided into the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah. Israel was conquered by the Assyrians in 722 BC. Judah fell to the Babylonians in 586 BC and Jerusalem was sacked. The Jews were enslaved and taken to Babylon. In 539 BC, after the conquest of Babylon by the Persians, the Jews were allowed to return, but most remained in Mesopotamia. In 140 BC, the Jews again cemented their rule over Jerusalem and parts of Palestine under the Hasmonean dynasty, but this independent rule was short-lived as the Romans incorporated Palestine into their empire in 63 BC. Nevertheless, the Jews retained autonomy and some authority inside the Roman Empire. The Jewish king Herod the Great, a vassal of the Romans, built the second temple during his rule that lasted from 37 to 4 BC. The present-day Western Wall, or the Wailing Wall, a site considered extremely holy by the Jews, is a remnant of the second temple, which was destroyed by the Romans when they sacked Jerusalem and ended Jewish autonomy. The Jews briefly regained control of Jerusalem during the Bar Kokhba revolt against the Romans from 132 to 135 AD, but the Romans crushed the rebellion, massacred many Jews, and banned them from entering Jerusalem. Despite this ban, a significant Jewish population remained in Palestine, particularly in the region of Galilee. 5 centuries later, the Jews again gained control of Jerusalem in 614 during a war between the Persians and the Byzantines in which the Jews volunteered to fight for the former. But again, the Jewish rule over Jerusalem ended quickly with the Roman victory in 630. Not until 1967 would the Jews capture Jerusalem again. In the following centuries, a vast majority of Jews migrated to Europe, where they established thriving communities. But they also faced regular persecution. Christianity had become the dominant religion in Europe, and many Christians loathed the Jews and thought of them as the murderers of Jesus. As religious fervor gripped Europe during the Crusades, the anti-Jewish and anti-Muslim sentiment reached unprecedented levels. The Jews suffered persecution, evictions, and massacres. For example, in 1290, Edward I of England also known as Edward the Longshanks, who was a veteran of the failed Ninth Crusade, ordered to expel all the Jews from England. The hatred for Jews made its way into European folklore and literature as well. In the celebrated Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer, there is a story titled The Prioress's Tale. In this story, Jews are portrayed as child murderers and servants of Satan. In 1492, after the fall of Granada and the end of Muslim rule in Spain, the Spanish Jews were either killed or expelled by the new Christian authorities. Many of the expelled Jews migrated to Eastern European territories of the Ottoman Empire. The French Revolution of 1789 proved a blessing for Western European Jews as they managed to get citizens' rights there afterward. The Western European Jews made great strides in material prosperity and education, and some of them became very influential in their countries. In contrast to secularized Western Europe, Eastern Europe remained dominated by Orthodox Christianity under the Tsars of the Russian Empire. The Jews suffered from discrimination and pogroms in Russia during the 19th century. This persecution convinced many Jews to think about creating a country of their own. Hence, the ideology of Zionism, with the goal of creating a Jewish nation state, found many adherents in Eastern European parts of the Russian Empire. The anti-Jewish pogroms from 1881 to 1884 in the Russian Empire gave great impetus to the Zionist movement there. A Zionist organization founded in Russia named Hibat Zion established the first Zionist settlement in Palestine. This was done in 1882 and it was named Rishon LeZion. Rishon LeZion had been largely financed and supported by the famous Rothschild banking family. Today, Rishon LeZion is the fourth largest city in Israel with a population of more than 250,000 people. The early Zionist ideas were crystallized clearly by a Zionist physician Leon Pinsker in his book Auto-Emancipation, which was also published in 1882. Pinsker declared Jewish security in Europe a mirage. He argued in his book that the Jews had only themselves to rely upon in their quest for their national honor and security. He believed that not only the Jews of Eastern Europe, but also of Western Europe will never be truly accepted by European society due to severe and deeply ingrained hatred of the Jewish nation and race by the European Gentiles. The only solution, according to Pinsker, was the creation of an independent Jewish political entity that would safeguard the interests of the Jewish nation. Among Zionists, Palestine was by far the most favored location for the creation of a Zionist state. Palestine was integral to the Jewish national identity, and it was in that country that the Jews had witnessed their brightest triumphs. The Jews had always believed that they will be returned to their ancient abode in Palestine, but a crucial difference between traditional Judaism and Zionism was that while the former believed that only a Messiah ordained by God could lead them to Palestine, the latter wanted to take the matter into their own hands. Due to this difference, Zionism can be called a secular project that defined the Jewish nation more on the basis of race than religion. In 1896, the book Der Judenstaat, translated into English as The Jewish State, was published. Written by an Austro-Hungarian Zionist journalist Theodore Herzl, the book became the Bible of Zionism. Herzl implored the Jews of Europe to migrate to Palestine and create a Jewish state there. A very energetic political activist, Herzl traveled all over Europe, visited Palestine, and met many leading dignitaries of his age to lobby for the creation of his envisioned Zionist state. At that time, Palestine was under Ottoman rule. In 1896, Herzl attempted to gain an audience with the Ottoman Sultan Abdul Hamid II. He was willing to offer that in exchange for Palestine, the Zionists will take care of the Ottoman Empire's massive sovereign debt. This was a tempting offer for the debt-ridden empire, nicknamed the sick man of Europe, and many Ottoman officials humored Herzl, but Sultan Abdul Hamid II refused to meet him and sent the following message instead. My people have won this empire by fighting for it with their blood and have fertilized it with their blood. We will again cover it with our blood before we allow it to be wrested away from us. Let the Jews save their billions. Herzl didn't give up though. He was finally able to obtain an audience with Sultan Abdul Hamid in 1901, but was refused again. Sultan Abdul Hamid expressed sympathy with the European victims of anti-Semitism and said that the Jews would be welcome in the Ottoman Empire as individuals fleeing persecution, but not as a nation bent on carving a state of its own at the expense of the Ottoman Empire and its Arab subjects inhabiting Palestine. The Sultan also issued a decree forbidding the sale of land to non-Ottoman Jews in Palestine, but such was the state of decay and corruption in the Ottoman state at that time that this decree was widely disobeyed, and the Zionists were able to buy land in Palestine through various proxies and by bribing the local Ottoman officials. In 1897, Herzl founded the World Zionist Organization and convened the first Zionist Congress in Basel. Its program declared that the goal of Zionism was the creation of a home for the Jewish people in Palestine to be secured by public law. In 1901, at the 5th Zionist Congress in Basel, Herzl founded the Jewish National Fund to finance the buying and development of land in Palestine for the Zionists. Strict rules were laid down for the administration of land bought through the Jewish National Fund. It was decreed that only Jewish labor would be allowed to work on the lands bought by the fund. Basically, it aimed to create exclusive Jewish zones in Palestine from which the native Arabs of Palestine would be completely and perpetually excluded. The lands bought by the Jewish National Fund became the seeds of the Jewish state of Israel in the Arab land of Palestine. By 1914, 40,000 Zionists had entered Palestine, doubling the existing Jewish population of Palestine. Still, they were heavily outnumbered by some 570,000 native Arabs who called Palestine home. The Zionists also established 44 settlements of various sizes and were successful in buying about 100,000 acres of land. At the end of this episode, we will briefly discuss the aims and motives of Zionism. The oft-repeated view is that modern political Zionism was born out of European anti-Semitism. The Jews opted to struggle for a Jewish state in order to escape discrimination and persecution in Europe. This is the truth, but not the whole truth. Other factors, some even more significant than this, were at play at the turn of the 20th century. A question needs to be asked here: why Palestine? The Zionists could have got vacant land easily in either Africa or South America for their independent nation state, but they remained adamant on Palestine, which was already heavily populated by Arabs who had inhabited it for more than a millennium. Instead of becoming pioneers in a vacant land, the Zionists chose to become colonizers in the home of another nation. Today, many Israelis might frown at Israel being called a settler-colonial state, but the founder of Zionism, Theodore Herzl, was quite open about it. Herzl saw Jewish migration to Palestine, or possibly elsewhere, as a movement of colonization similar to that being undertaken by European countries at the time, and thus something with which they would sympathize. But in contrast to Herzl, who preferred a Jewish state in Palestine but was somewhat open to accepting a Jewish state elsewhere, for example Uganda as well, the vast majority of Zionists only wanted Palestine. The fixation on Palestine resulted not from a desire to escape anti-Semitism, but from a desire to rebuild a Jewish utopia in the land of David and Solomon. The name of Palestine awakened dreams of lost magnificence and grandeur among the Zionists. The famous Jewish scientist Albert Einstein put it this way: Palestine is first and foremost not a refuge for East European Jews, but the incarnation of a reawakening of the sense of national solidarity. Buoyed by their recent successes in the fields of economy, finance, education, and science, the European Jews now felt confident for the first time in 2000 years that not only they could create a Jewish state in Palestine, they could also make this state and its people a truly world historical force that would transform the world. Professor Shahid Alam has eloquently described this sentiment. It is impossible to read the writings of the Zionist founders and their precursors, men like Moses Hess, Theodore Herzl, Ahad Ham, Vladimir Jabotinsky, and David Ben-Gurion, without coming away with the sense that these men were moved by a sense of destiny, that they understood the deep structures of history and they were inspired by visions of Jewish power. They evinced tremendous energy, resolution, and a strong conviction in their ability to intervene in the affairs of the great powers. The Zionists knew that the Jews lacked the two ingredients that make a nation: a common land and a common language. But this did not deter them. Zionists would create these missing ingredients with the elan of their nationalist will. Fired up by a sense of destiny and dreaming of a new Jewish utopia, the Zionists gave scant consideration to the Arab people of Palestine. Many of them simply ignored the Arab presence and pretended that Palestine was vacant. Given the prevalent racism among Europeans against non-white people at that time, this was quite understandable. Some, like Herzl's close associate Max Nordau, were proclaiming that the Jews carried a civilizing mission similar to the colonial powers of Britain and France. He said that the Zionists were going to Palestine to extend the moral boundaries of Europe as far as the Euphrates. This group of Zionists believed that the colonization of Palestine would benefit the Arabs the same way British colonization had brought great boons to India. But the most realistic Zionists like Zeev Jabotinsky rejected both these delusions. They knew that the colonization of Palestine and the establishment of a Jewish state in Palestine could only be done by crushing the existing Arab population and then removing it physically from the land of Israel. This would mean prolonged conflict and war. They were ready to take that risk. In the next episode of Palestine versus Israel, we will discuss the First World War, the Arab Revolt, the Sykes-Picot Agreement, the momentous Balfour Declaration, and the Fassel-Weizmann Agreement. Stay tuned, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel.